So, this is the story of how everything unraveled at a corporate party. I thought it would be a typical evening, filled with small talk, bad food, and pretending to enjoy conversations with people I barely knew. My wife Lisa and I had been married for almost 10 years. I always considered us the perfect couple: trust, respect, and what I thought was a strong foundation. But oh, how wrong I was. Lisa had been acting strangely for months. Late nights at the office, secretive phone calls, and that distant look in her eyes whenever I asked her about her day. I pushed the doubts aside, convincing myself that she was just stressed from work. After all, she was climbing the corporate ladder at her marketing firm, and I was proud of her. That night at the party, I was determined to be the supportive husband. I mingled, chatted with her colleagues, and tried to fit in. Then out of nowhere, Lisa's boss, Mark, approached me. He was a slick guy, always seemed to have this smug air about him, but tonight he was different, more aggressive, more arrogant. "Hey man, how's it going?" Mark slapped me on the back a little too hard, making my drink spill over the rim of my glass. "Good, good," I replied, forcing a smile. "How about you?" He leaned in, his breath reeking of alcohol. "Listen, you cuckold," he hissed. "From now on, your wife will be my slave, and you will support her and your worthless life when I don't use her. And if you resist, I will leave you with nothing, and I will still have her." I was stunned. I didn't know how to react. My heart pounded in my chest, and my mind raced with confusion and anger. Was he serious? Was this some twisted joke? I scanned the room looking for Lisa. There she was across the room, laughing and flirting with some of her colleagues. She looked so carefree, so unfaithful. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She was lying to me. She had been lying to me for God knows how long. Mark's words echoed in my head. My wife, his slave, support her and my worthless life. It was like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Rage started to build up inside me. I wasn't going to let this smug bastard and my deceitful wife get away with this. I stormed out of the party, my thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal and plans for revenge. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The next morning, while Lisa was still asleep, I started making plans. If Mark thought he could threaten me and get away with it, he had another thing coming. And as for Lisa, she would regret ever crossing me. This was just the beginning. My revenge would be immediate and merciless. They had no idea what was coming for them. The morning after the party was a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. As I watched Lisa sleep, all I could think about was how she had betrayed me. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I needed proof. Solid, undeniable evidence that would expose her lies and bring her world crashing down. I started by checking her phone. She had always been careful, never leaving it unattended. But luck was on my side. She had left it on the nightstand. I carefully unlocked it, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and anticipation. There it was, a slew of messages between her and Mark, their conversations filled with flirtatious banter, plans to meet up, and even some explicit texts. My stomach churned with disgust as I read through them. This wasn't just a one-time fling. It was a full-blown affair. I took screenshots of everything, emailing them to myself as insurance. Next, I decided to check her laptop. She had a habit of saving important documents there, and I was hoping to find more incriminating evidence. Sure enough, I found a folder labeled Work Stuff. Inside, there were emails between her and Mark discussing their encounters, their plans to travel together for business, and even some photos of them together. It was more than enough to confirm what I already knew. With my evidence secured, I started planning my next move. I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just blow up in a fit of rage. I had to be strategic. I wanted to destroy both Lisa and Mark, and I wanted to do it in a way that left no room for them to recover. Over the next few days, I continued to gather information. I installed a tracking app on her phone, recording her calls and messages. I also set up a hidden camera in our bedroom to capture any incriminating conversations or actions. It felt invasive and wrong, but I needed all the evidence I could get. One night, while Lisa was out working late, I went through her closet. I found a stash of expensive lingerie things I had never seen her wear. It was clear that she was dressing up for someone else. My anger burned hotter, fueling my determination to see this through. I reached out to a private investigator, explaining my situation and providing him with the evidence I had collected. He assured me that he would dig deeper, find out more about their meetings, and gather any additional proof needed to make my case airtight. As the days went by, Lisa continued her charade, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. She would come home late, offering weak excuses and fake smiles. I played along, pretending everything was fine, all the while seething inside. The private investigator came through with more damning evidence photos of Lisa and Mark at a hotel, receipts from their dinners and trips, and even a recording of them in Mark S.'s office. It was a treasure trove of betrayal, and I was ready to use it. The final piece of my plan was to confront them both in a way that would leave them utterly humiliated. I decided to wait for the next corporate event. It was a month away, giving me plenty of time to prepare and make sure everything was perfect. I started dropping subtle hints to Lisa, letting her think she was getting away with her lies. I needed her to feel secure, to believe that I was clueless. Little did she know her world was about to be turned upside down. As the day of the event approached, I could barely contain my anticipation. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and showing them that they had messed with the wrong person. The stage was set, the evidence was in place, and I was ready to unleash hell on both Lisa and Mark. They had no idea what was coming, and I relished the thought of seeing their faces when the truth finally came out. The day of the corporate event finally arrived. I dressed in my best suit, making sure every detail was perfect. Lisa was in high spirits, excited about the evening. She had no clue what was about to happen. We drove to the venue together with her chatting away about how important the night was for her career. I played along, nodding and smiling, all the while feeling the tension built inside me. As we entered the lavishly decorated hall, I spotted Mark across the room. He was surrounded by colleagues, basking in the glow of his perceived invincibility. Lisa immediately drifted off to join her work friends, leaving me to mingle on my own. I kept a close eye on her, watching her every move. After an hour or so, I saw my opportunity. Lisa was talking to Mark near the bar, their body language far too familiar for mere colleagues. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to come. With my phone in hand, I approached them, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hey, honey, having a good time?" I asked, my voice dripping with false cheer. Lisa turned to me, her smile faltering slightly. "Oh, hi! Yes, just catching up with Mark. You remember Mark, don't you?" I nodded, extending my hand to Mark. Of course, how could I forget? Mark shook my hand, his grip firm, his smile smug. "Nice to see you, man. Lisa was just telling me about your plans for the weekend." I forced a laugh. "Oh, I am sure she was. You know, I've been meaning to have a word with you, Mark. Something important." Mark raised an eyebrow, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I turned to Lisa, my expression hardening. "Lisa, I think you should hear this too." She looked confused but nodded, stepping closer. I took out my phone and pulled up the evidence I had gathered. The screenshots, the emails, the photos, everything. I handed the phone to Lisa, watching her face pale as she scrolled through the incriminating material. "You? What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "This," I said, my voice steady and cold, "is proof of your affair with Mark. All those late nights, those business trips, it is all here. You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and I have all the evidence." Mark, as smug expression disappeared, replaced by a look of panic. "Listen, man, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it is exactly what it looks like," I interrupted, my anger barely contained. "You thought you could use her, manipulate her, and threaten me. You thought I wouldn't fight back?" Lisa's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. "Please, let us talk about this. We can work it out." "No, Lisa," I cut her off. "There's nothing to work out. You made your choices, and now you will face the consequences." I turned to Mark, my voice low and menacing. "And as for you, Mark, you're done. I've already sent all this to the board. They'll know what kind of man you are. Your career is over." Mark S.'s face turned white as a sheet. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The room had grown quiet, people nearby starting to notice the confrontation. I didn't wait for his response. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving them to deal with the fallout. I felt a sense of grim satisfaction knowing I had exposed them both. But it wasn't over yet. This was just the beginning of their downfall. As I exited the venue, my phone buzzed with messages from the private investigator. He had dug up even more dirt on Mark embezzlement, fraud, and other shady dealings. I had everything I needed to bring him down completely. The ride home was silent. Lisa tried to speak a few times, but I shut her down each time. I had nothing left to say to her. She had betrayed me, and there was no going back. When we arrived home, I packed a bag and left. I couldn't stay in the same house with her anymore. I needed space to clear my head and plan my next move. Lisa's tears and pleas fell on deaf ears. She had made her bed, and now she would lie in it. As I drove to a nearby hotel, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and a small sense of triumph. I had taken the first step in my revenge, and there was no turning back now. Mark and Lisa had underestimated me. They thought they could control me, break me, but they were wrong. I was just getting started, and I wouldn't stop until they had lost everything. This was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. The days following the corporate event were a whirlwind of chaos and upheaval. The fallout from my confrontation with Lisa and Mark spread quickly through the office and social circles. I had made sure that the evidence I had gathered was sent to the right people, and it didn't take long for the repercussions to hit. First, there was Lisa. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment on the other side of town. She tried to reach out to me multiple times, calling, texting, even showing up at my new place. Each time I ignored her. My silence spoke louder than any words could. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and there was no forgiveness for that. One evening, I received a frantic call from her best friend, Emily. She was worried about Lisa, who had been drinking heavily and spiraling into a deep depression. A part of me felt a twinge of guilt, but I quickly squashed it. Lisa had brought this upon herself. Still, I promised Emily I would check in on her, if only to make sure she wasn't a danger to herself. I visited Lisa one evening, unannounced. When she opened the door, she looked like a shadow of her former self, disheveled, eyes red from crying, a half-empty bottle of wine in her hand. She broke down the moment she saw me, collapsing into a heap on the floor. "Please, we can fix this," she sobbed. "I made a mistake, but I still love you. We can work through this." I remained standing, looking down at her with a mixture of anger and pity. "Lisa, you didn't just make a mistake. You made a series of deliberate choices. You lied, you cheated, and you betrayed me. There's no fixing this." She continued to plead, but I stayed firm. "I'll make sure you re-okay, that you get the help you need. But we are done. I have already filed for divorce. This is the end." Her sobs grew louder, but I turned and walked out, leaving her to grapple with the consequences of her actions. I called Emily and told her what had happened, asking her to keep an eye on Lisa. Despite everything, I didn't want her to hurt herself. Next came Mark. The evidence of his affair with Lisa was just the tip of the iceberg. The private investigator had uncovered a treasure trove of incriminating information embezzlement, fraudulent deals, and unethical practices. I sent it all to the board of directors and waited. It didn't take long for the hammer to fall. Mark was called into a board meeting and summarily fired. His reputation in the industry was destroyed, and he faced legal consequences for his actions. Watching his downfall was immensely satisfying. He had thought he could manipulate and threaten me, but he had underestimated my resolve. In the midst of all this, I found unexpected allies in some of Lisa's colleagues. They had always suspected something was off with Mark, and my revelations confirmed their suspicions. One of them, a woman named Sarah, reached out to me. She had been a victim of Mark's advances and was willing to testify against him. Sarah and I met for coffee, and she shared her story. Mark had harassed her for months, making her work life a nightmare. She had been too afraid to speak up, fearing for her job. But with Mark out of the picture, she felt empowered to come forward. Her testimony was the final nail in his coffin. As the weeks went by, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, taking on new projects and responsibilities. My colleagues, aware of what I had been through, were supportive. They respected my strength and resilience, and I found solace in their camaraderie. I also started therapy. I needed to process the betrayal, the anger, and the pain. My therapist, Dr. Johnson, was a godsend. She helped me navigate the storm of emotions, encouraging me to focus on my own healing and growth. One day, as I was leaving a session, I ran into Sarah again. We started talking, and soon our conversations became a regular thing. She was kind, understanding, and had a wicked sense of humor. Over time, our friendship grew deeper, and I found myself looking forward to our meetings. One evening, as we sat in a quiet cafe, she looked at me, her eyes serious. "You know, you were stronger than you think. What you have been through would break most people. But here you are, still standing." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Thanks, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without support from you, my friends, my therapist. It means a lot." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone in this, and remember, it's okay to lean on others." As I walked home that night, I felt a sense of hope. The storm had passed, and though the scars remained, I was ready to move forward. My journey wasn't over, but I was no longer consumed by the need for revenge. Instead, I focused on healing, rebuilding, and finding happiness again. Mark and Lisa were relics of a painful past, but they no longer had power over me. I was free, and that freedom tasted sweeter than any revenge. The months following the fallout were challenging but transformative. I had moved into a new apartment, a cozy space that felt like a fresh start. It was small but comfortable, and most importantly, it was mine. Lisa and I were officially divorced, and Mark was out of the picture. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My focus was on rebuilding my life. I immersed myself in work, taking on projects that challenged and excited me. My colleagues noticed a change in me, a newfound determination and resilience. I started getting recognized for my efforts, and soon enough, I was offered a promotion. It felt like a validation of my hard work and perseverance. Outside of work, my friendship with Sarah continued to grow. We spent a lot of time together, whether it was grabbing coffee, going for walks, or just talking about life. She had her own wounds to heal, but we supported each other through the process. She was a bright spot in my life, and I was grateful for her presence. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah and I decided to go hiking. It was a beautiful day, the sun shining in the air crisp. As we trekked through the trails, we talked about everything and nothing. It was easy, comfortable, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. As we reached the top of the hill, we sat down to catch our breath, taking in the stunning view of the city below. Sarah turned to me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know, I've been thinking," she said, "about everything we've been through. It's amazing how far we've come." I nodded, gazing out at the horizon. "Yeah, it is. There were times I didn't think I'd make it through, but here we are." She smiled, a warmth in her eyes. "You were stronger than you realized, and you've helped me more than you know." I felt a surge of emotion, grateful for her words. "You've helped me too, Sarah. I don't know what I would be done without you." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the moment. It was a reminder that life goes on, that healing is possible, and that there is always hope for a better future. Back in the city, I started exploring new hobbies. I took up cooking, experimenting with different recipes, and enjoying the process of creating something delicious. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my energy into something positive. I even started taking cooking classes, where I met a group of people who shared my newfound passion. One evening, after a particularly successful cooking class, I invited Sarah over for dinner. I wanted to show off my new skills and thank her for everything she had done for me. She arrived with a bottle of wine, and we spent the evening cooking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. As we sat down to eat, I raised my glass. "To new beginnings," I said, smiling at her. She clinked her glass against mine. "To new beginnings," she echoed, her eyes shining with happiness. The dinner was a success, and as the night went on, we found ourselves talking about our dreams and aspirations. It felt natural, effortless, and I realized that I was starting to feel something more than friendship for Sarah. It scared me, but it also excited me. One night, after another dinner together, Sarah and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie. The room was dimly lit, and there was a comfortable silence between us. I turned to her, feeling a rush of emotions. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." I began, my heart pounding. She looked at me, her expression curious. "What is it?" I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how much you mean to me, and I think I am falling for you." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I feared I had ruined everything. But then she smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made my heart soar. "I have been feeling the same way," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to say anything because I was scared it might change things between us. Relief washed over me, and I reached for her hand, holding it gently. "I don't want to lose you, Sarah, but I also can ignore these feelings. I want to see where this can go." She squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with emotion. "I do too, Derek. Let's take it one step at a time." That night marked the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. We took things slow, respecting each other's boundaries and healing processes, but with each passing day, our bond grew stronger, and our feelings deepened. As the months turned into a year, I realized that I had found something truly special with Sarah. She was my rock, my confidant, and my partner in every sense of the word. Together, we had overcome our pasts and built a future filled with love, trust, and happiness. One evening, as we were sitting on the balcony of my apartment watching the sunset, I turned to her, feeling a sense of peace and contentment. "Sarah, I want you to know that you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. I am so grateful for you, and I can add a weight to see what the future holds for us." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I feel the same way, Derek. We've been through so much, but it's only made us stronger. Here is to a lifetime of new beginnings." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew that we were ready to face whatever challenges came our way, together. Our pasts had shaped us, but they no longer defined us. We had found our way to each other, and that was the greatest victory of all. Despite my newfound happiness with Sarah, there was still unfinished business that I needed to address. The legal battle with Mark was ongoing, and though his downfall had been swift, the fallout was far from over. I wanted to make sure he paid for every one of his transgressions, not just for what he did to me, but also for the other victims he had wronged. One morning, I received a call from my lawyer, Dan. "Derek, we need to meet. There have been some developments in the case against Mark. We arranged to meet at his office later that day." As I walked into the sleek, modern building, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. This was the final step in bringing Mark to justice, and I was ready to see it through. Dan greeted me with a firm handshake and ushered me into his office. "Take a seat, Derek. We have a lot to discuss." I sat down, my eyes scanning the stack of documents on his desk. "What's the latest?" Dan leaned forward, his expression serious. "We've gathered substantial evidence against Mark. His financial fraud, embezzlement, and unethical practices are well documented. The board is pressing charges, and he asks facing significant jail time. However, we've hit a snag." "What kind of snag?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "He's trying to drag you into it." Dan explained, he asked, claiming that you were complicit in some of his dealings, trying to shift the blame and mitigate his own guilt. "It is a desperate move, but we need to be prepared to counter it." I felt a surge of anger. He asked, lying. "I had no part in any of his schemes." "I know," Dan said, his tone reassuring, "but we need to prove it. I've already spoken to Sarah, and she agreed to testify. Her experience with Mark, harassment will be crucial in discrediting his claims." I nodded, grateful for Sarah's support. "What else do we need?" "Character witnesses, documentation, anything that can corroborate your innocence," and Mark asked guilt. "We have a strong case, but we need to be thorough." Over the next few weeks, I worked closely with Dan and his team. I gathered emails, testimonies from colleagues, and any documentation that could clear my name. It was exhausting, but I was determined to see it through. I wouldn't let Mark's lies drag me down. Sarah was a rock throughout the process. She attended meetings with me, offered emotional support, and even helped me track down old colleagues who could testify on my behalf. Her unwavering belief in my innocence kept me going, even when the stress felt overwhelming. The day of the trial finally arrived. The courtroom was filled with a tense, expectant atmosphere. Mark sat at the defendant's table, looking haggard and desperate. I took my place, surrounded by my legal team and character witnesses. Sarah was called to the stand first. She spoke clearly and confidently, detailing the harassment she had endured from Mark. Her testimony was powerful, painting a vivid picture of his predatory behavior and establishing his lack of credibility. Next, Dan presented the evidence we had gathered. Emails, financial records, and witness testimonies all painted a damning picture of Mark's actions. My own testimony was straightforward and honest. I explained my role in the company, my complete lack of involvement in Mark S. schemes, and the betrayal I felt when I discovered the extent of his wrongdoing. Mark S. defense tried to poke holes in our case, but they had little to work with. His desperation was evident, and it only served to further discredit him. After days of testimony and cross-examinations, the judge called for closing arguments. Dan S.'s closing argument was compelling and concise. He summarized the evidence, emphasized Mark S.'s pattern of deceit and manipulation, and highlighted the impact of his actions on the victims, including myself and Sarah. When the judge finally delivered the verdict, it was a moment of profound relief. Mark was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. The courtroom erupted in whispers and murmurs, but all I felt was a sense of justice and closure. As we left the courthouse, Sarah hugged me tightly. "It's over, Derek. You did it." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past year lifting from my shoulders. "We did it. I couldn't have done this without you." We celebrated that evening surrounded by friends and colleagues who had supported us through the ordeal. It was a night of laughter, relief, and new beginnings. Mark was finally out of our lives, and I could focus on building a future with Sarah. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Sarah and I grew even closer. Our bonds strengthened by the challenges we had faced together. We talked about our future, our dreams, and the life we wanted to build. One evening, as we were sitting on the balcony watching the sunset, I took her hand in mine. "Sarah, there's something I want to ask you." She looked at me, her eyes full of warmth and curiosity. "What is it?" I took a deep breath, feeling my heart race. "Will you move in with me? I want to start this new chapter of our lives together officially." Her face lit up with a smile, and she squeezed my hand. "Yes, Derek, I'd love to." As we embraced, I felt a sense of peace and happiness that I hadn't felt in a long time. The past was behind us and the future was bright. Together, we were ready to face whatever came our way, building a life filled with love, trust, and new beginnings. Sarah moving in was a new chapter that came with its own set of challenges and joys. We spent weekends merging our lives, packing up her apartment, and setting up our home together. The process was exciting and a bit nerve-wracking, but with each box unpacked, our bond grew stronger. One evening, after a particularly tiring day of moving, we decided to take a break and order some takeout. Sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by half-empty boxes, we ate Chinese food and talked about our plans for the future. "You know," Sarah said, picking at her food, "I've been thinking about starting my own business. A consulting firm for women in the workplace, focusing on empowerment and career advancement." I looked at her, admiration shining in my eyes. "That is a fantastic idea, Sarah. You'd be amazing at it. What made you decide to take the plunge?" She shrugged, a smile playing on her lips. "I guess everything we've been through made me realize that life's too short to not follow your passions. And seeing you fight for justice, it inspired me. I want to help other women avoid the kind of situations I went through." I reached over and took her hand, giving it a squeeze. "You all be great, and you know I'll support you every step of the way." With that, we started planning her new venture. It was exhilarating to see her so passionate and motivated. We spent countless evenings brainstorming, creating business plans, and building a website. Sarah's energy was infectious, and it wasn't too long before her consulting firm, Empower Her, was up and running. Meanwhile, I continued to thrive at work. My promotion came with new responsibilities, and I relished the challenge. My colleagues respected me, and I found myself enjoying the work more than ever. The dark cloud of the past year had finally lifted, and I was ready to fully embrace this new chapter. One evening, as I was wrapping up a project, I received an unexpected email. It was from Lisa. My initial reaction was to delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the email and began to read. "Derek, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say this. I'm truly sorry for everything I did. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I've been in therapy, trying to understand my actions and work on myself. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be a better person. I hope you are finding happiness and peace. You deserve it, Lisa." I sat back, processing her words. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a surprising sense of closure. Lisa's apology didn't change what had happened, but it did offer a small sense of resolution. I replied with a brief but sincere message, wishing her well, and hoping she found the peace she was seeking. With Lisa's chapter finally closed, I focused on my future with Sarah. Our relationship continued to flourish, and empower her quickly gained traction. Sarah's seminars and workshops were a hit, and she was making a real difference in the lives of many women. One evening, we decided to celebrate her firm's first big contract. We dressed up and went to our favorite restaurant, savoring a delicious meal and each other's company. As we toasted to her success, I felt a surge of pride and love for her. "Here's to empower her," I said, raising my glass, and to the incredible woman behind it. Sarah blushed, clinking her glass with mine. "And here is to you, Derek, for being my rock and my biggest supporter." As the night went on, we talked about our dreams and plans. We were both excited about what the future held, and the possibilities seemed endless. I realized how much my life had changed in such a short time, and how grateful I was for every moment. A few months later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, I decided it was time to take the next step. Sarah and I had planned a hike, one of our favorite activities. As we reached the top of the trail with the city spread out below us, I turned to her, my heart pounding. "Sarah, there is something I need to ask you," I began, my voice shaking slightly. She looked at me, her eyes filled with love and curiosity. "What is it?" I took a deep breath and pulled out a small box from my pocket, opening it to reveal a sparkling ring. "Sarah, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've been my partner, my confidant, and my best friend. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes, and she nodded, a radiant smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Derek, 1,000 times yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger, and we embraced, laughter and tears mingling as we held each other. It was a moment of pure joy and love, and I knew that our future together would be bright. As we walked back down the trail hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The past was behind us, and the future was ours to create. Together we had faced adversity and emerged stronger, ready to build a life filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led me to this moment. With Sarah by my side, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. We were a team, and nothing could stand in our way. The weeks that followed Sarah's acceptance of my proposal were a whirlwind of excitement and planning. We wanted our wedding to be a celebration of our journey and the love that had brought us together. Our families and friends were thrilled for us, and their support meant the world. We decided on a fall wedding, wanting to take advantage of the beautiful colors and cooler weather. Sarah and I spent countless evenings discussing every detail, from the venue to the guest list to the menu. It was a lot of work, but doing it together made it feel less like a chore and more like an adventure. One weekend, we drove out to a charming vineyard just outside the city. The moment we arrived, we knew it was the perfect place for our wedding. The rolling hills, lush vines, and rustic charm of the vineyard were exactly what we had envisioned. "This is it," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with excitement as we walked through the rows of grapevines. "I can see us getting married here." I nodded, feeling a sense of peace and happiness. "It is perfect." We booked the venue and began working with the Vineyard's event coordinator to plan our special day. There were so many decisions to make, but we approached each one as a team. Sarah's creativity and attention to detail complemented my practical approach, and together we created a vision for our wedding that felt uniquely ours. One evening, as we were finalizing the guest list, Sarah looked at me thoughtfully. "Do you think we should invite Lisa?" The question took me by surprise. I had moved on from the anger and betrayal, but inviting Lisa to our wedding felt like a significant step. I thought about her apology, her efforts to change, and the closure I had felt from her message. "Maybe we should," I said slowly. "It could be a way to truly close that chapter. Besides, I'm not holding any grudges anymore." Sarah nodded, her expression understanding. "It says your call, Derek. I'll support whatever you decide." In the end, we decided to send Lisa an invitation. It felt like the right thing to do, a way to show that I had moved past the hurt and was ready to fully embrace my new life. As the big day approached, we threw ourselves into the final preparations. Sarah found a stunning dress that made her look like a princess, and I picked out a classic suit that matched the elegance of the venue. Our friends and family helped with the decorations, and the Vineyard S staff ensured everything was perfect. The morning of the wedding was a flurry of activity. Sarah and her bridesmaids were getting ready in the Vineyard to Charming cottage, while my groomsmen and I prepared in rustic barn nearby. The excitement and anticipation were palpable, and I could hardly wait to see Sarah walk down the aisle. As the ceremony began, I stood at the altar feeling a mix of nervousness and overwhelming happiness. The vineyard looked magical, with twinkling lights and autumn leaves creating a picturesque backdrop. The soft strains of music filled the air, and I watched as our friends and family took their seats. Then the music shifted, and everyone turned to look down the aisle. There she was, Sarah, looking radiant and beautiful in her dress. My heart felt like it might burst with love and pride as she walked toward me, her eyes locked on mine. When she reached the altar, we took each other's hands, and the officiant began the ceremony. We had written our own vows, wanting to express the depth of our love and commitment in our own words. As I spoke, I saw tears glistening in Sarah's eyes, and I felt my own eyes well up with emotion. Sarah, you've been my light in the darkest of times. You've shown me what true love and partnership mean. I promise to stand by your side, to support you, and to cherish you for the rest of my life. Sarah's voice trembled with emotion as she recited her vows. Derek, you've brought so much joy and strength into my life. Together, we've overcome so much, and I know we can face anything. I promise to love you, to support you, and to build a beautiful life with you. As we exchanged rings and shared our first kiss as husband and wife, applause and cheers erupted from our guests. It was a moment of pure joy and love, a culmination of everything we had worked for and dreamed of. The reception was a celebration filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Sarah and I couldn't stop smiling, and our guests remarked on how happy and in love we looked. It was the perfect start to our married life. Later in the evening, as we took a quiet moment together, I looked around at the people who had supported us and helped us get to this point. I felt a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had led us to this beautiful moment. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder, sighing contentedly. We did it, Derek. We remarried. I kissed the top of her head, feeling a surge of love and pride. Yes, we did, and this is just the beginning. As the night came to a close, we danced under the stars, surrounded by our loved ones. The future stretched out before us, filled with promise and possibility. Together, we were ready to face whatever came our way, knowing that our love and partnership would guide us through. Our wedding day was a celebration of love, resilience, and new beginnings. It marked the start of a new chapter in our lives, one filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities. With Sarah by my side, I knew that the best was yet to come. The weeks following our wedding were a blend of blissful, newlywed moments and the reality of merging our lives even more deeply. We returned from our honeymoon, a serene beach getaway, feeling rejuvenated and ready to take on the world together. The sand, the sunsets, the shared laughs, and whispered dreams under the stars created memories we did cherish forever. Back home, we settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah's consulting firm, Empower Her, was flourishing. Her passion and dedication had paid off, and she was now hosting seminars and workshops across the city. I loved seeing her thrive, and I supported her in any way I could, from helping with logistics to simply being her sounding board. One Saturday morning, over a lazy breakfast of pancakes and coffee, Sarah looked at me thoughtfully. Derek, I've been thinking about expanding Empower Her. I want to open a dedicated space, a center where women can come for workshops, counseling, and support. I smiled, admiring her ambition. That's an amazing idea. Have you found a place yet? She nodded, her eyes lighting up with excitement. There's an old warehouse downtown. It needs some work, but it has so much potential. I'd love for us to go see it together. That afternoon, we drove to the warehouse. It was indeed in need of some TLC, but I could see Sarah's vision for the space. As she walked me through her ideas, renovating the open floor plan into training rooms, a counseling area, and a communal space, I felt a surge of pride. She was creating something incredible, a place where women could find strength and support. Let us do it, I said, smiling at her. We can make this happen. With a mix of savings and a small business loan, we purchased the warehouse and began the renovations. It was a labor of love, and we spent countless weekends painting, setting up furniture, and preparing the space. Friends and family pitched in, and slowly but surely, Sarah's dream became a reality. Meanwhile, my career continued to advance. The promotion had given me more responsibility and opportunities to lead projects. I found satisfaction in my work, and the respect of my colleagues made the long hours worthwhile. I also began mentoring newer employees, sharing my experiences and helping them navigate their own career paths. One evening, as I was wrapping up a particularly long day at the office, I received a text from Sarah come to the warehouse. I have a surprise for you. Curious and excited, I headed over. When I arrived, the place was empty except for Sarah, who was standing in the middle of the newly renovated space, a mischievous smile on her face. "What is the surprise?" I asked, walking toward her. She reached into her bag and pulled out a set of keys. "These are for you." I took the keys, puzzled. "For me? What are these for?" She pointed to a door at the back of the warehouse. "I know how much you've loved working on projects and building things, so I've set up a workshop for you back there. A place where you can create, relax, and just enjoy your hobbies." I was speechless. "Sarah, this is incredible. Thank you so much." We walked to the workshop, and as she opened the door, I saw a beautifully equipped space complete with tools, workbenches, and even a few of my unfinished projects from home. It was perfect. "I thought you might like to have a place to unwind," she said, wrapping her arms around me. "You've done so much for me and empower her. This is my way of giving back to you." I hugged her tightly, feeling a wave of gratitude and love. "You always know exactly what I need. Thank you, Sarah." As the months passed, our lives settled into a fulfilling routine. Sarah's center thrived, and my workshop became a sanctuary where I could create and unwind. We continued to support each other's dreams and ambitions, growing closer with each passing day. We also made time for ourselves, ensuring that our relationship remained a priority. Date nights, weekend getaways, and quiet evenings at home kept our bond strong. We navigated challenges together, always communicating openly and honestly. One summer evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Derek, have you thought about starting a family?" The question took me by surprise, but it was something I had been considering. "I have," I admitted. "I think we'd make great parents. What about you?" She smiled, her eyes filled with love. "I want to have a family with you. I think we are ready for this next chapter." We spent the next few weeks discussing our plans, preparing ourselves for the possibility of parenthood. The idea of starting a family filled me with excitement and a little bit of nervousness, but I knew that with Sarah by my side, we could handle anything. One evening, a few months later, Sarah came home with a glow in her eyes. She handed me a small, wrapped package. "Open it," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Inside the package was a tiny pair of baby shoes and a positive pregnancy test. I looked up at her, my heart swelling with joy. "We were going to have a baby?" She nodded, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Derek, we were going to be parents." We embraced both, overwhelmed with emotion. This was the start of a new and incredible journey, one that we were ready to face together. As the months went by, we prepared for the arrival of our baby. We set up a nursery, attended prenatal classes, and read every book we could find on parenting. Our friends and family were thrilled, and their support meant everything to us. The day our baby arrived was the most magical moment of our lives. Holding our newborn in my arms, I felt a sense of awe and love that I had never experienced before. Sarah was radiant, and we both knew that our lives had changed forever in the best possible way. We named our daughter Emily, a tribute to Sarah's best friend who had been such a support through our journey. Watching Emily grow, experiencing her first smiles, and hearing her first laughs brought us more joy than we could have ever imagined. Parenthood was challenging, but it was also the most rewarding experience of our lives. Sarah and I navigated the sleepless nights and early mornings as a team, always leaning on each other for support. Emily became the center of our world, and our love for her deepened our bond even more. As I watched Sarah with Emily, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life we had built together. From the ashes of betrayal and pain, we had created something beautiful and enduring. Our journey had not been easy, but it had brought us to this incredible moment. One evening, as we sat in the nursery rocking Emily to sleep, Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with love. "We've come so far, Derek. I couldn't have asked for a better partner, a better life." I smiled, kissing her gently. "We've built something amazing together, and I know that whatever the future holds, we all face it together." As Emily slept peacefully in her crib, I felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Our past had shaped us, but it no longer defined us. We were a family now, ready to embrace the future with open hearts and endless love. Our journey was far from over, but I knew that with Sarah and Emily by my side, the best was yet to come. We were ready for whatever life had in store, knowing that together we could overcome anything.